The night was heavy, yet quiet in a way that felt almost deliberate. I followed him into the garden, trying to stay close but careful not to step on a twig or let my presence disturb him. The path beneath my feet was uneven, dust and small stones pressing into my sandals, and I thought I should be used to it by now. But I wasn't. Every step felt loud in my own ears, like the sound of my own hesitation made physical. He moved a few paces ahead, his shoulders slightly hunched, though his head was lifted with a strange, quiet purpose. I could see the tension in his back, the way his hands clenched, then loosened again, as though he were holding on to something invisible. I wanted to speak, to offer comfort, to say something that would make it easier, for him, for me. But the words would not come. My throat felt tight, and the night air made every breath deliberate. We came to a place where the olive trees grew closer together, their branches thick and knotted, shadows pressed against the ground, soft and restless in the flicker of the faint moonlight. I tried to take it all in, the scent of damp earth, the slight rustle of leaves, the quiet murmurs of the other disciples somewhere behind us. But my attention kept returning to him, to his face, to the stillness that wasn't stillness, the tension that felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. He stopped and knelt. I stopped too, unsure if I should join him, unsure if I could pray, unsure if I could even understand what prayer could do in a moment like this. His head bowed, his hands pressed to the ground. I remember the small sound, almost imperceptible, the whisper of breath, the quiet cracking of words only he could hear. The night felt wider around me. I could not see him clearly through the shadows, but I could feel him. Every heartbeat, every tremor, every weight he carried seemed to press against my chest. I wanted to stay awake. I had promised him I would. I had said I would stand by him no matter what. My own voice echoed those promises still, sharp and certain in my memory. But the night was heavy. My eyes would not stay open. My hands shook as I sat on the cold stone, trying to remind myself that vigilance was not just about watching, it was about being present. I tried to anchor myself in that presence, tried to remind myself that loyalty is not a feeling but a choice, and yet my body betrayed me. Every few moments I looked at him again. I saw the lines in his face deepen, not from fear, but from carrying something so immense it could not be named aloud. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, to promise him that I could be brave, that we could face whatever was coming together. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to feel it. But I felt only the tightness in my chest, the shaking in my hands, and the unsteady rhythm of my own thoughts. I remember trying to imagine what courage might look like, whether it was a steady hand, a lifted voice, or simply the act of remaining. I had never thought of myself as someone who could fail. And yet, here I was, my promise still on my lips, my limbs heavy with fatigue, my mind racing with doubt. I thought of the other disciples, some of them dozing, some of them pretending they were awake. I thought of how easy it would be for us all to vanish into the shadows, to hide and tell ourselves we had done our best. I was ashamed of the very idea that I might not be enough. And yet, the fear was not shame alone. It was anticipation too. Anticipation of what was coming. Anticipation of loss I did not want to imagine. Anticipation of decisions I might not have the courage to make. My hands clenched against my knees. My breath came unevenly. I could not pray. I could not speak. I could not do anything but watch him. And I watched him pray. I watched the way his body trembled as if he were holding the weight of the world in his hands. I watched the quiet resilience, the patience, the steady grief. I did not fully understand it, and perhaps I never would, but I felt it in a way that left me hollow and awake at once. I felt both pulled toward him and unworthy to approach, tied to him by the promise of loyalty and by the awareness of my own fragility. I tried to wake the others. "Stay awake," I whispered, though my own voice was weak. "Stay awake and watch with him." A few murmured, but no one rose fully. The night pressed on. My eyes burned, and still I could not move. Still I felt myself tethered to him, as if my very being depended on staying present. I wanted to be brave, I wanted to be steadfast, I wanted to be Peter, the one who would never abandon him. And yet, even then, I knew that the weight of what was coming could crush any courage I held. I knew that promises spoken in daylight sounded different in the dark. I knew that my hands might fail, my voice might fail, my resolve might fail. The thought made me shiver, not from cold, not from fear alone, from the awareness that human hearts, no matter how determined, are fragile in ways we cannot predict. So I sat, watching him, trembling, awake, exhausted and silent, waiting for something I could not name, waiting for a night that seemed endless, and for a morning that was already beginning beyond the horizon. The first sound was subtle at first, a soft crunch of sandals against gravel, the shuffle of many feet moving in a rhythm that didn't belong to the quiet of the garden. I had been leaning against a gnarled olive tree, trying to breathe without disturbing him, trying to convince myself that I could remain awake, that I could remain steadfast. But then the sounds multiplied, and I realized we were no longer alone. I could see them now, soldiers, torches raised, and the glint of weapons catching the faint moonlight. My heart stuttered, but my legs would not move. It was as though the ground itself had grown heavy beneath me. My hands clutched at the bark of the olive tree, and I tried to anchor myself, to remember my vow, to remember the courage I had promised he would see in me. But fear pressed in so quickly that it nearly stole my breath. He stepped forward, unafraid. I could see it in his posture, quiet, deliberate, sorrowful, and yet undeterred. The calm in him was almost unbearable, a mirror that reflected all my own weaknesses. I wanted to move closer, to shield him, to do something, anything that would prove my loyalty. But my feet refused. I could only watch as he approached the soldiers, and the ones who had followed him fell back, uncertain and confused. One of the soldiers stepped forward. Their eyes were sharp, their hands steady, their orders clear. And still, he did not resist. I wanted to scream, to warn him, to push myself forward, but my voice caught in my throat. It was not just fear of the soldiers, it was fear of failure, fear of shame, fear of what it would mean if I could not stand firm when it mattered most. A moment came when the tension in the garden felt almost visible, as if the very air had thickened. One of the soldiers reached for him, and in that instant I acted without thinking. My hand shot out, grabbing a small knife I had carried, and I struck. The sound, sharp and final, rang louder than it should have, but it did nothing to slow them. It only startled me, made my own blood run cold. He looked at me then, not with anger, not with disappointment, not even with reproach, only with a depth of understanding that cut through me like the night itself. In his eyes I saw what I had not wanted to see. That courage is not in weapons, not in gestures, not in the promises we speak aloud. Courage is in hearts that remain, even when everything shakes, even when fear presses from every side. The soldiers pressed forward, surrounding him, and suddenly the garden was filled with movement. Voices rose, some familiar, some harsh. I could hear murmurs, the low sounds of my fellow disciples as they realized what was happening. I felt the urge to rally, to leap between him and danger, but my limbs felt numb, my voice useless. I followed at a distance, barely noticing where I stepped, almost as if my body were moving on its own accord, while my mind struggled to make sense of what was unfolding. He allowed himself to be taken, hands unresisting, face composed. The quiet resolve in him contrasted so sharply with my own trembling that it became almost unbearable to watch. I wanted to run forward, to declare my presence, to demand that they leave him alone, but every instinct in me shouted to hide, to vanish, to pretend I was not there at all. I remember the moment clearly when someone behind me, a friend, a fellow disciple, whispered or breathed my name. It felt like a thread connecting me back to reality, back to myself, back to the promises I had made and the failures I had yet to face. But still, I hesitated. My hands hung useless at my sides, my knees weak, my heart hammering with shame I could not yet name. He did not cry out. He did not strike. He did not resist. And in that stark contrast, I felt every inadequacy in myself magnified. The garden that had seemed so alive with shadows and whispers moments before now felt constricting, pressing in from all sides. I was unprepared. I was unsteady. I was human in the most vivid, undeniable way. And then it was over. He was led away, flanked by soldiers, calm and composed as the night held its breath around us. The others scattered, some disappearing into the shadows, some lingering in frozen disbelief. And I stood there, rooted to the ground, unable to follow quickly, unable to act, unable even to speak. The knife I had raised felt heavy in my hand, not as a weapon, but as a testament to my own confusion and fear. I was left in the garden, trembling, uncertain, aware more than ever of the fragile thread of courage I had carried. I had acted impulsively, yet ineffectively. I had promised loyalty, yet my fear had already begun to fracture it. And I knew, deep down, that the real test, the one I had not yet faced, was still ahead. I followed, quietly, at a distance, keeping him in sight, but not close enough to protect, not brave enough to intervene again. Every step I took felt measured against my own weakness, a silent counting of what courage I had left and what I might still fail to muster. The night seemed endless, and the weight of what was coming pressed against me in a way that words could not describe. When they led him away, the garden seemed to collapse in on itself. The shadows that had once felt like shelter now felt exposed, as if the darkness itself had turned against us. I stood where I was for a moment longer than I should have, listening to the sound of footsteps fade, the soft clink of armor, the low murmur of voices moving farther down the path. Each sound felt like it was pulling something out of me, strand by strand. The others scattered quickly. I saw shapes moving through the trees, cloaks brushing against branches, hurried breaths swallowed by the night. No one called out. It was not planned, not discussed. Fear moved us faster than thought ever could, and then, just as suddenly, I was alone. I told myself I would follow him. Not closely, not boldly, but enough to know where they were taking him, enough to stay near the truth of what was happening. It felt like a compromise and I clung to it as if compromise were the same thing as faithfulness. My feet moved before my heart could argue. The path out of the garden was narrow and uneven. I kept to the edges, stepping where the ground was softer, where my steps would not carry sound. My breath came shallow, my chest tight. Every rustle made me stop. Every distant voice made my muscles tense. I had never been so aware of my own body, of how loud a breath could be, how much space a man could take up simply by existing. I could see them ahead, the torchlight bobbing and swaying, casting long shadows that stretched and broke against the walls and trees. He walked among them, not dragged, not struggling. That hurt more than I expected. Part of me wanted chaos, some disruption that would give me permission to act, to be brave. But there was none. Only order, only movement, only the steady progression of something that could not be stopped. I stayed far enough back that I could pretend I was not part of it, that if anyone turned suddenly, I could melt into the dark and become no one. I hated myself for that thought, and yet I held on to it. Fear had become practical. It whispered strategies, offered reasons. It told me this was wisdom, not cowardice. As we moved through the sleeping city, the air changed. The garden's stillness gave way to stone walls, narrow streets, and the faint smells of smoke and refuse. Somewhere, a door creaked. Somewhere a dog barked and then fell silent. Most of the city slept, unaware that something was breaking open in the night. I wondered if the stones themselves felt it, if the streets remembered every footstep laid upon them. My mind would not be quiet. It replayed his words from earlier, spoken with such calm certainty that I had not wanted to hear them. I had argued then, I had insisted, I had sworn. The memory burned now. Not because he had been right, but because I had been so sure I could never be wrong. I wanted to believe that following at a distance still counted. That presence, even hidden, still mattered. I told myself that I could help later when things were clearer, when danger had passed. I told myself that this was patience, not fear. But every time I slowed, every time I slipped deeper into shadow, I felt the distance grow. Not just between him and me, but between the man I thought I was and the man I was becoming. There were moments when the torchlight flared brighter, and I caught a clearer glimpse of his face. He looked tired, not defeated, not lost, just weary in a way that spoke of long obedience, of carrying something that others could not see. Each glimpse made my chest ache. I wanted to run to him then, to close the distance in a single reckless moment. But my feet remained careful, controlled, restrained by fear that had wrapped itself around my will. I thought of the others. I wondered where they had gone, if they were hiding in doorways, pressed against walls, hearts racing as mine was. I wondered if they felt the same pull between loyalty and survival, between love and fear. It helped briefly to think I was not alone in this weakness, but the comfort faded quickly. Their fear did not excuse mine. As we neared the place where they were taking him, the crowd grew thicker. More voices joined the procession. Faces appeared at windows. Shadows shifted behind doorways. I felt exposed again, even from my place at the edge. I lowered my head, pulled my cloak tighter, tried to make myself smaller. I hated how natural that felt. Every step forward felt like a question I could not answer. Was I still his disciple if I did not stand beside him? Was silence a form of betrayal, or was it simply the truth of my fear? I did not have words for what I felt. Only a growing weight, heavy and constant, pressing against my chest. I remembered the way he had looked at me in the garden after my impulsive strike, after my clumsy attempt at courage. There had been no anger in his eyes, only clarity. That memory stayed with me now, steady and painful. It made it harder to hide from myself. When they entered the courtyard, I stopped again, lingering at the threshold. Light spilled out into the street, warm and inviting in a way that felt deceptive. Laughter drifted from somewhere inside, casual and unaware. The contrast was jarring. How could the world continue like this, as if nothing was wrong? I took a breath and stepped forward. Not boldly, not confidently, just enough to remain near. The distance was still there, carefully measured, deliberately maintained. But I was close enough now to hear voices clearly, to see faces, to feel the tension humming beneath the surface. I told myself this was as far as I could go, that this was all the courage I had left for the night. I did not yet know how fragile even this decision was. I only knew that I was here, standing in borrowed light, trying to remain unseen, and hoping, quietly, desperately, that I would not be asked to prove who I was. The courtyard was warmer than the street, lit by a low fire that burned without urgency. The flames moved gently, as if even they understood this was not a place for sudden motion. People stood in loose circles, hands stretched toward the heat, voices low and unguarded. It felt wrong to step into such ordinary human comfort while he was being questioned somewhere beyond the walls. Still, my feet carried me forward. I chose a place near the edge, close enough to the fire to feel its warmth, far enough to slip away if I needed to. The stones beneath me were smoother here, worn down by years of feet passing over them without thought. I tried to stand as others stood. I tried to breathe as they breathed. I told myself that if I could just look like I belonged, no one would look too closely. For a moment, it worked. The fire cracked softly. Someone laughed, then stopped. A guard shifted his weight, metal scraping faintly against metal. The sounds blended together, creating a kind of cover. I kept my eyes low, watching the flames curl and pull at the air. I focused on small things, the way the heat reached my hands unevenly, the way smoke drifted and disappeared, the way my own heart refused to slow. I was still close enough to hear what was happening inside. Voices rose and fell, sharper than the ones near the fire. Questions, answers, silence. I did not know what was being said, only that every pause felt heavy. I leaned slightly, straining without meaning to, and then forced myself back again. It was safer not to listen too closely. That was when I felt it. Not a hand, not a voice, just the sudden awareness of being noticed. I looked up and she was there. A servant girl, standing a little apart from the others, her face lit by the fire in a way that made her eyes seem sharper than they probably were. She was not threatening. She did not look angry. She looked curious, as though she were fitting together pieces that had almost aligned on their own. She studied me for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You were with him," she said. It was not loud. It did not stop the conversations around us. No one turned. No one leaned in. The words were offered almost gently, as if she were stating something obvious, something that did not need defense. But my body reacted before my mind could catch up. The warmth of the fire vanished. My hands went cold. The space around me felt suddenly too open, too visible. I became acutely aware of every face, every shadow, every possible path of escape. My thoughts scattered, searching for something solid to hold on to, something that would steady me. I heard my own voice answer, and it sounded thin. "I don't know what you're talking about." The words came out quickly, practiced almost, as if they had been waiting just beneath the surface. I did not shout. I did not argue. I simply denied. And as soon as I did, a strange quiet settled inside me, not relief, but a hollow stillness. She looked at me again, her expression unreadable. Then she shrugged slightly and turned away, already losing interest. Just like that, the moment passed. The fire crackled. Someone shifted closer to the heat. Life continued. I stood there, stunned by how easy it had been. I told myself it was nothing, just a misunderstanding, just a way to stay close without drawing attention. I told myself I had not betrayed him. Not really. I was still here. I had not run. I was still listening, still watching. But something had shifted. I felt it in the way my shoulders tensed, in the way my gaze stayed low. I felt it in the distance that opened quietly between my words and my heart. I had crossed a line so softly that no one noticed, perhaps not even me, until it was already behind me. The voices inside rose again, sharper this time. I caught fragments of accusation, disbelief, impatience. My chest tightened. I wanted to hear his voice just once, to know he was still steady, still himself. But the walls held their secrets, and I was left with only echoes. I edged closer to the fire, seeking warmth I did not deserve. The heat felt different now, less comforting, more exposing. Light revealed things. Light made shadows sharper. I wondered if I should move away, but staying felt safer than moving. Movement invited attention. I kept replaying the question in my mind. You were with him. It was such a small sentence, such a simple truth. I had been with him. I had walked beside him, eaten with him, listened to him speak words that rearranged my understanding of everything. And yet, when the truth asked for my voice, I had refused it. I tried to justify myself quietly. I told myself that truth spoken at the wrong time could do harm, that there would be another moment, a better moment, when courage would be more useful. These thoughts settled over me like thin cloth offering cover without warmth. Another person glanced at me, then looked away. I flinched anyway. My body was learning fear faster than my mind could reason with it. Every look felt like a test. Every pause felt like danger. I wondered if he knew. The thought landed gently but carried weight. I did not imagine him surprised. I did not imagine him angry. I imagined him aware in that quiet way of his, as though nothing I did existed outside his knowing. That made it harder to breathe. I stayed where I was, because leaving would have confirmed something I was not ready to name. Staying allowed me to pretend just a little longer that I was still the man I had been earlier that night. The man who had spoken boldly. The man who had promised more than he now seemed capable of giving. The fire burned lower. Ash shifted and fell inward. Someone added a piece of wood, and the flames flared briefly before settling again. Time moved, slow and unkind. I did not yet know that the first denial makes the second easier. I only knew that something fragile inside me had cracked quietly without sound, and that I was standing in its aftermath, hoping, without reason, that it would somehow hold. I stayed near the fire, watching the light and listening to distant voices, unaware that the night had not finished asking me who I was. Time moved strangely after that. It did not hurry, but it did not wait either. It pressed forward with a quiet persistence, like water finding its way through stone. I remained near the fire, though I no longer felt its warmth the way I had at first. The heat touched my skin, but it did not reach whatever had gone cold inside me. I tried to listen for his voice again. I told myself that if I could just hear him speak even once, it would steady me. But the sounds from inside came in broken pieces, raised voices, a pause that stretched too long, then more voices, layered and restless. I could not tell who was speaking or what was being said, only that something heavy was unfolding beyond my sight. The people around the fire shifted. Someone moved closer. Someone else stepped away. The small circle rearranged itself without concern for me, and yet every movement felt like it might expose me. I became aware of how I stood, how I held my hands, how often I looked toward the entrance. I was performing normality, and it exhausted me. Then another voice found me. This time it was not gentle curiosity. It was observation sharpened by time. "You're one of them," a man said, squinting slightly as he studied my face. "I've seen you with him." The words struck harder than the first question. They carried certainty. Not accusation, not anger, just recognition. Something in me recoiled immediately. My heart began to pound, loud enough that I was sure others could hear it. I felt the familiar rush of heat to my face, the tightening in my chest. I shook my head too quickly. "No," I said, "you're mistaken." My voice was stronger this time, firmer. I hated that I noticed the difference. The denial came with less hesitation, as though my mouth had already learned the shape of the lie. I did not look at him as I spoke. I stared instead at the fire, at the way the flames bent and straightened, indifferent to everything else. The man frowned slightly, unconvinced, but he did not press the matter. He turned away, drawn back into another conversation, and the moment passed as quietly as the first. I stood there, stunned again. Not by the question, but by myself. It should have been harder. It should have cost me more. But it didn't. The second denial slipped out more easily than the first, smoother, almost practiced. Fear had found its rhythm. It was no longer frantic. It was controlled, efficient. I told myself I had no choice, that the situation demanded it, that speaking the truth here would accomplish nothing good. These thoughts came quickly, lining up to defend me before I even asked them to. I let them stand. But beneath them, something deeper stirred. A growing awareness that each word I spoke against the truth did not simply protect me, it reshaped me. I felt smaller than I had a moment before, not physically, internally. As if something essential were being folded inward, tucked away where it could not be seen or reached. I did not know how to stop it. I moved farther from the fire, then letting the shadows take me in. The light felt too revealing. In the darkness, I could breathe a little easier. I leaned against a stone wall, its surface cool and rough against my back. I closed my eyes briefly, hoping the questions would stop finding me. They didn't. A little while later, another voice rose, louder than the others, edged with confidence. "Certainly this man was with him," someone said. "Listen to him. He's from the same place." The words carried across the courtyard, and this time they did not land quietly. Heads turned, faces shifted in my direction. The weight of their attention pressed down on me all at once. There was no space to retreat, no shadow deep enough to disappear into. Fear surged through me, hot and immediate. It drowned out every other thought. I felt cornered, exposed in a way I had been trying desperately to avoid. The truth stood right there, waiting for me to claim it, and I felt utterly incapable of doing so. "I don't know the man," I said. The words left my mouth sharp and fast. edged with something I barely recognized. I heard myself add more, my voice rising, insisting, swearing. I did not plan it. It spilled out of me, driven by panic, by the need to make them believe me, by the desperate hope that force could end the moment. As soon as I stopped speaking, the courtyard seemed to go very still. And then, somewhere not far away, a rooster crowed. The sound cut through everything. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was ordinary. The kind of sound that usually fades into the background of morning. But in that instant, it felt as though the night itself had spoken back to me. The sound echoed once, then settled, leaving a silence behind it that felt unbearable. I knew. I did not need to count. I did not need to remember the exact words he had spoken earlier. I knew. Something inside me collapsed under the weight of that knowing. The promises I had made. The confidence I had carried. The certainty that I would stand firm when it mattered. All of it crumbled quietly without spectacle. I lifted my eyes then, almost against my will. Across the courtyard, through the open space and the shifting figures, I saw him. He was being led from one place to another, guarded, surrounded. He looked tired, bruised by the night, and then his eyes met mine. There was no anger in them, no accusation, no surprise. There was only recognition. A steady, sorrowful understanding that felt deeper than any rebuke could have been. It was as if he were looking not just at what I had done, but at who I was in that moment. Afraid, broken, still known. The look lasted only a moment. Then he was gone from sight, carried forward by hands that did not know him. Something broke inside me then, fully and finally. I turned away from the courtyard, from the fire, from the voices. I pushed through the edge of the gathering, my vision blurred, my breath uneven. No one stopped me. No one called after me. The night released me as easily as it had trapped me. I walked away quickly, not caring where my feet took me. The rooster's cry echoed in my ears over and over, marking the moment I wished I could undo. I had denied him. Not once. Not in confusion, but deliberately, repeatedly, and finally. And the weight of that truth followed me into the dark, heavier than anything I had ever carried. I did not run far before my strength left me. My legs carried me through narrow streets and into the quiet edges of the city, but my body moved without direction, guided only by the need to be away, away from the fire, away from the voices, away from the place where my own words still hung in the air, refusing to disappear. The night felt different now, thinner somehow, as if the darkness no longer had any shelter left to offer. I slowed, then stopped, pressing my hand against a stone wall to steady myself. The surface was cool, damp with the breath of the early morning. I leaned there, head bowed, trying to breathe without shaking. The rooster's cry still echoed in me. It did not repeat itself in the air, but it repeated itself in my chest, in my thoughts, in the quiet spaces where excuses used to live. The sound had settled into me like a marker I could not erase. I knew what I had done. There was no confusion left, no fog to hide in. The night had stripped everything down to its truth, and the truth stood plainly before me. I had not failed by accident. I had not misspoken. I had chosen myself over him. Again and again, I had weighed my safety against my loyalty, and I knew which one I had reached for. That knowing was heavier than fear. Fear, at least, comes with urgency. It demands action. It pushes the body to move. This was different. This was stillness. This was the slow settling of something irreversible. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the ground, my back against the stone, my knees pulled close. The posture felt small, but I did not resist it. I no longer needed to appear strong. My hands shook when I looked at them. These were the same hands that had reached for nets, that had broken bread, that had been lifted in confidence when I swore I would never leave him. They felt unfamiliar now, as if they belonged to someone I no longer trusted. I pressed my palms together, not in prayer, but because I did not know what else to do with them. The memory of his eyes returned to me, not sharply, gently. It came without force, without accusation. That was what made it unbearable. If he had looked at me with anger, I might have defended myself, even inwardly. If he had looked away, I might have told myself he did not care. But he had looked at me with understanding, as if he had always known. That thought did not bring comfort. It deepened the ache. It meant my failure had not surprised him. It meant he had walked into this night carrying not only his own burden, but mine as well. It meant my denial had not changed his regard for me, and somehow that felt worse than judgment. Tears came then, not all at once, slowly, quietly. They surprised me with their steadiness. I did not sob, I did not cry out. The sound stayed trapped in my chest, heavy and restrained. My shoulders shook, but I kept my head bowed as if the ground itself deserved more honesty than the sky. I remembered my words from earlier that evening, how certain I had sounded, how easily I had spoken of loyalty, of devotion, of following him anywhere. I had meant them. That was what hurt the most. I had not lied then. I had believed myself. I had thought courage was something you decided once, something you declared and then carried forward unchanged. I had not known how fragile it could be when pressed, how quickly it could thin under the weight of fear. I had not known how easily love could be silenced when survival raised its voice. The city began to stir around me. Somewhere, a door opened. Somewhere else, footsteps passed, unhurried and ordinary. Life was resuming its rhythm, indifferent to the fracture that had opened inside me. I felt strangely detached from it all, as if I were watching from a distance even now. I wondered if this was who I truly was. Not the man who spoke boldly, not the one who stepped forward eagerly, but the one who shrank when it mattered most. The thought settled heavily. I did not try to push it away. I let it sit with me, uncomfortable and unresolved. What does a man do when he sees himself clearly for the first time? I did not know. I only knew that I could not undo what I had done. The words had been spoken. The moment had passed. Time did not bend for regret. It moved forward, steady and unyielding, carrying consequences with it whether I was ready or not. I thought of him again, being led from place to place, questioned, accused, handled by hands that did not know him. I wondered if he was cold, if he was tired, if he was still calm in the way he had been all night. The thought that he might be alone pressed against me, sharp and unbearable. I wanted to go to him. The desire rose suddenly, fierce and aching, not to defend myself, not to explain, just to be near him again, just to stand where he could see me even if I said nothing at all. But even as the desire surfaced, I knew I would not act on it. Not now, not like this. Shame held me in place. It wrapped itself around my resolve, heavy and convincing. It told me I had forfeited my place, that I no longer had the right to stand beside him, that my presence would only remind him of what I had done. These thoughts felt true in the moment, and I let them speak without challenge. I sat there as the sky began to lighten, the darkness thinning slowly, almost reluctantly. The change was subtle at first, a softening at the edges of the night. I watched it happen without expectation. Morning felt undeserved. The weight inside me did not lift with the coming light. If anything, it settled more firmly, as if the day itself demanded honesty. I did not try to imagine what would happen next. The future felt distant, unreachable. All I could hold was the present moment and the knowledge it carried. I had denied him, not because I did not love him, but because, in the moment when love required courage, I had chosen fear instead. The truth of that stayed with me, steady and unrelenting, as the night gave way to morning and I remained where I was, exposed and undone, carrying a knowledge that would not let me go. The sky was no longer dark when I finally stood. It had softened into a pale grey, the kind that makes edges blur and distances feel uncertain. Morning was arriving carefully, as if it knew it was stepping into something fragile. I brushed the dust from my cloak without thinking, a small, useless gesture, and began to walk again. I did not know where I was going. I only knew I could not remain where I had been. The stone wall, the cold ground, the place where the night had broken open inside me. It felt too heavy to carry forward. So I moved, slowly, letting my feet choose the path for me. The city was waking. Doors opened just wide enough for people to slip through. Water was poured into basins. Voices rose in low greetings, familiar and ordinary. The sound of it all felt distant, as though I were moving through a world separated from me by a thin veil. I was here, but not fully present. Everything felt muted, softened by the weight I carried. I kept my head lowered, not out of fear of being recognized, but because looking at faces felt unbearable. Everyone I passed seemed whole, intact, unaware. I wondered how many of them had made promises the night before, how many of them believed they knew themselves well enough to predict what they would do when tested. My thoughts kept returning to the same place, not the courtyard, not the fire, but his eyes. They stayed with me, steady and quiet. I had expected them to fade as the night ended, to lose their sharpness with the coming of day, but they did not. They followed me through the narrow streets and open spaces alike, not as an image, but as a presence I could not shake. I realized then that I had always thought of failure as an ending, a final judgment, something that closed doors and left you outside, listening to life continue without you. But this felt different. It felt unfinished, not resolved, not concluded. Just open, in a way that was both terrifying and strangely alive. I found myself near the edge of the city again, where the paths widen and the air feels less confined. The ground here was uneven, marked by years of passing feet and shifting earth. I stopped and looked out, watching the light spread slowly across the land. It revealed things without hurry, allowing shadows to linger even as it moved forward. I wondered where the others were. If they had slept at all, if they were also walking, also thinking, also carrying their own versions of this night. The thought brought no comfort, but it did remind me that fear had not chosen me alone. We had all scattered. We had all faltered in different ways. Still, my failure felt singular, personal. It had my voice in it, my words. I sat again, this time on a low rise where I could see the road stretching ahead. Travelers would come this way soon. Merchants, pilgrims, people moving towards something they believed in. I felt separate from all of it, as if I were standing just outside the flow of meaning. I tried to pray. The impulse came naturally, out of habit more than hope. but the words did not form. Everything I thought to say felt either too small or too dishonest. Asking for forgiveness felt presumptuous. Asking for understanding felt insufficient. So I sat in silence instead, letting the quiet speak what I could not. In that stillness, I noticed something I had not expected. The weight inside me, though still heavy, was no longer frantic. The sharp edge of panic had dulled. What remained was steadier, slower. Painful, yes, but not chaotic. It felt like grief rather than fear. And grief, I realized, meant that love was still there. That thought surprised me. If love had left, this would have been easier. I could have hardened myself, justified my actions, walked away convinced that none of it mattered as much as I once believed. But love had not left. It had only been wounded. And wounded love does not disappear. It waits. I remembered moments from before this night. Small ones. The way he had spoken my name when he first called me. The way he had listened when I spoke too quickly, too confidently. The patience in his silence when I failed to understand. These memories did not accuse me. They simply existed, steady and unchanging. I wondered if he would remember me like that now, or if this night had rewritten everything. The question lingered without an answer. The sun rose higher, warming the air gradually. I felt it on my face and closed my eyes, not to escape, but to receive it. The warmth did not fix anything. It did not erase the night or soften its truth. But it reminded me that time was moving, whether I was ready or not. I knew I could not remain here forever. Eventually, I would have to return. To the others, to whatever came next, but not yet. Not this moment. This moment belonged to honesty, and I was not finished with it. I stayed where I was, breathing slowly, letting the morning surround me. I did not ask the day to be kind. I did not ask for clarity. I simply allowed it to be what it was. Somewhere beyond my sight, events were still unfolding. Decisions were being made. Words were being spoken that would change everything. I could feel that, even without knowing the details. The world was moving towards something irreversible. And here I was, standing in the aftermath of my own small, devastating choice, unsure of my place in what was coming. I did not yet know if there was a way forward for me. I did not yet know if trust could be rebuilt, or if belonging could be restored. I only knew that I was still breathing, still remembering, still aware. And for reasons I could not fully explain, that felt like something worth holding on to, even now, as the day unfolded without answers. I stayed until the light was no longer tentative, until the grey gave way to something clearer and the shapes of the world settled into themselves. Morning had fully arrived by then, unashamed of its presence, moving forward without asking whether I was ready for it. I stood slowly, feeling the stiffness in my legs, the dull ache in my back. My body reminded me that I was still here, still part of the world that continued to turn. For a moment, I considered where I might go next. The thought felt distant, almost irrelevant. Direction required certainty, and certainty was something I did not have. What I had instead was memory. Not just of the night, not just of the fire, the questions, the sound of my own voice betraying me, but of everything that had come before it. Days spent walking dusty roads, evenings filled with stories and shared food, quiet moments when he spoke without raising his voice, and somehow everything inside me leaned in to listen. Those memories did not erase what had happened. They did not soften it or make it smaller. But they refused to let this one night become the whole story. They reminded me that I had been known long before I failed, and that knowing had not been shallow or conditional. I realized then that the hardest part was not the fear I had felt, or even the shame that followed. It was the waiting. the space between what I had done and whatever might come next. The uncertainty of whether failure was the final word or simply a chapter I did not yet understand. I had always thought endings arrived with clarity, with a sense of finality that told you exactly where you stood. But this felt different. This felt unfinished, open in a way that was both painful and strangely gentle. I walked a little farther down a path that led nowhere in particular. The land opened around me, quiet and wide. Birds moved through the air without urgency. Leaves shifted in the breeze. Creation did not hold its breath the way I did. It continued, steady and untroubled, as if reminding me that life does not wait for us to feel resolved. I thought again of his eyes, not as they were in the courtyard, but as they had been so many times before. Patient, attentive, steady. He had looked at people the way you look at something you intend to keep, not something you plan to discard when it disappoints you. That memory stayed with me, not as comfort, but as truth. I did not know what would happen to him. The thought tightened my chest every time it surfaced. I did not know what would happen to us, to the group that had once felt so solid, so certain of its purpose. Everything I had leaned on felt suddenly fragile. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the shame, beneath the unanswered questions, something quieter remained. Not confidence, not courage, but attachment. A bond that had not snapped, even when stretched to its limit. I could not deny that, no matter how much I wished I could rewrite the night. I understood then that love is not proven only by bold moments. It is revealed in what refuses to disappear, even when everything else falls apart. And my love for him, though shaken and wounded, had not vanished. It had only been exposed in its weakness. I did not make promises to myself in that moment. I did not swear that I would do better next time, or that I would find the courage I lacked. I had learned how fragile such words could be. Instead, I let the silence hold me, and I accepted the truth of where I was. I was not strong. I was not brave. I was not certain, but I was still his. The thought came quietly, without force, and I did not push it away. I did not argue with it or demand proof. I let it rest where it landed, gentle and unresolved, like so much else in my life. I turned back toward the city eventually, though not with purpose, just with the knowledge that staying forever at the edge would not change what had been done. The path ahead was unclear, but it existed, and that was enough for now. As I walked, I carried the night with me, not as a burden meant to crush me, but as something I would have to live with, learn from, and somehow hold alongside hope I could not yet name. I did not know how this story would end. I did not know if I would be restored or forgiven or trusted again.